Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be discussing the age-old question, how many days a week should you be training to maximize muscle growth? I'm going to be covering the specifics that a training program needs, hopefully answer some of the questions that you have, help with guidance of setting up your own training split, and yeah, hopefully you can learn something. So this video is geared towards people that are looking to maximize their muscle growth and just want a little bit of help setting up their training split or some key things to consider when doing so. This is not for someone that already has a training split that they really enjoy. If you're that person and you are enjoying the way that you're training, fuck my opinion, keep doing what you're doing, this is not for you. But in my personal opinion, these are the things that you need to consider if you want a training program that is going to maximize results. So I'm going to break this video down into 3 parts. The first part is going to be answer the question, how many days a week I think you should be training, and the answer may surprise you. I actually don't think there is an optimal amount of days that you should be training. I think it's going to be different for everyone. The main things it's going to come down to is your personal preference and your availability to train. A 5-day-a-week training program is not necessarily better than a 3-day-a-week training program. A 4-day-a-week training program is not necessarily better than a 5-day-a-week training program. It is going to come down to how adherent you are to any given training program. So the first thing you need to do when figuring out how many days you want to train and how to set up your training split is figure out how many days that you can 100% stick to, or how many days a week that you want to be in the gym. Keep in mind when choosing how many days a week you want to train, it doesn't necessarily matter how many days a week you're in the gym, it matters how many days that you can stick to consistently. That is going to be the biggest driver for results. So moving on to part 2, I want to talk about the specifics of what every good training program should have to maximize results. So the first thing I want to talk about is training frequency. In my opinion, it's probably the most important aspect of any given training program. I think that a 2 or 3 times a week training frequency is a must if you want to maximize muscle growth. In my opinion, this topic isn't really debatable. In just about every training study that looks at frequencies, the outcomes are fairly clear that training a muscle group multiple times per week is definitely the way to go. I'll even chuck up a training study on screen here, or a link to one that you can look at that shows exactly that. The next thing that you need to consider, which I also think is not really debatable, is rest days. Yes, if you want to maximize your progress, you absolutely need to be taking them. How many rest days you need in a week is going to differ from individual to individual, but you do need to consider that there is going to be a certain amount of rest days that you need to recover in time for your next session and to keep pushing the needle forward. The last 2 things your training program needs to consider is obviously your priority muscle groups, which is going to be highly specific to your individual preferences. So you need to know which muscle groups you want to be targeting, or preferencing, I should say, the most. And then the other thing that you want to figure out is training volume. Now that is probably a more complex topic, but you need to be picking a training volume that you are obviously doing enough sets per week that you're seeing great results, but also not doing too much that you're not able to recover and that it's not hindering your progress week on week, or noticing that you need to take deloads or weeks off the gym because you haven't recovered in time and you need that additional time away from the gym to recover more. That is a sign that your training program is probably not super effective if you're doing that regularly. So moving on to the third and final part, the part you're probably sticking around for, what training split should you be doing? And that is obviously going to be highly specific on how many days you want to train. I'm going to be covering 2 days all the way through to 5 days. Yes, you could potentially be doing a 6-day training split. I'm not going to talk about that today. There is arguments that it could be optimal, but for me personally, I've yet to see someone or coach someone that has made better results on 6 days a week versus 5. So if you're only available or want to train 2 days a week, you don't have a whole lot of options for training splits. If you want to hit training frequency guidelines that I've given, you basically are stuck to a full body day where you would do either the same session twice within a week, given 1 or 2 rest days in between, or 2 very similar full body days where you're hitting every muscle group for a couple of sets per session at a high intensity, and that will be the training split that you're pretty much stuck with to optimize things for your training. I'm not saying that a 2-day-a-week training program is the best way to go about things, but if it's your availability to train is only 2 days a week, then you've got to work with what you're able to do. So moving on to a more optimal range, a 3-day-a-week training program, again, my highest recommendation would probably be to do 3 full body days. You can split it up over 3 separate days where they're completely different exercises in each day, or you could just do a full body A-B split where you have 2 separate training days and then you repeat the first day twice, Or if you really aren't a huge fan of full body, you could do an upper body, lower body, and then a full body on your final day of the week. Again, separating each of these days with one rest day basically. So maybe one training session on Monday, one training session on Wednesday, and one training session on Friday. But I would highly recommend doing very similar movement patterns in each of these full body sessions. So if you're training 4 days a week, which is currently what I'm doing right now, you probably don't have a whole lot of options. My highest recommendation would be to do an upper lower split where you do 2 upper body sessions and 2 lower body sessions. The way I set mine up is upper on Monday, lower on Tuesday, resting Wednesday, again upper on Thursday and lower on Friday. But again, you could split that up to whichever days of the week suit you best, as long as you kind of have a rest day after each of your lower days before going into your next upper day. I think that is fine. But yeah, that would probably be my recommendation if you only wanted to train 4 days a week. If you're training 5 days a week, there's a few different options you have. My personal recommendation would be to set up your training program with a push-pull legs to start the week, rest on the Thursday, upper on the Friday, and then a lower body on the Saturday. I think that makes the most sense for me personally, where you're hitting everything twice in the week still. There's not a huge amount of crossover fatigue between your push and pull days on your Monday and Tuesday, and kind of allows for a little bit more recovery considering you're doing more training volume, training 5 days a week and only having 2 rest days. But there are other options. If your preference was you wanted to grow your upper body more so than your lower body, you could do 3 full upper body days and 2 lower body days where you would hit every upper body muscle group in your upper days. Again, you'd probably have to do that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But then you run into the issue where training volume may be slightly too high. So you might have to use lower training volumes and only do a handful of sets per muscle group. Probably only 2, I would say, maybe 3 per muscle group, depending on what exercises you're doing, to make sure that you are recovered in time for your next session. But again, this is highly specific to the individual. You may find that you recover perfectly fine and this is the way that you progress the fastest, and that overall is going to make the most difference in a training split. That's what you want. You're figuring out a training split that you can perform that is allowing you to get stronger the fastest. If you're noticing you're getting stronger, it means you're probably putting on muscle faster than any other way. But if you notice that you're not recovering, you're not getting stronger as fast as you were when you were doing a different training split or lower training volumes, then obviously that might not be the most optimal option for you. And again, if your preference was lower body on a 5-day training split, you could do 3 lower body days and 2 upper body days. But again, same as what I just said before, training volumes on the lower body days and even exercises will have to be very specific to allow you to recover in time, more than likely. So that was it for this video. If you stuck around this long, I hope it was helpful and you got something useful that you can take home and write your own training split with. Or if you don't want to do that and you just want some help and guidance from myself, I do have a link to my website where you can put through an inquiry form for my one-on-one coaching. But yeah, if you stuck around this long, thank you for watching. If you like the video, give it a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. And if not, I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.